Have you ever sat in the quiet of your own life and wondered why, despite everything appearing fine, something inside still aches? You smile, you function, you carry on, but there's a heaviness behind your ribs, a silent sorrow that words can't quite reach. You've tried. Meditation, conversations with friends, staying busy, staying distracted. You've told yourself, "I'm okay." But the stillness reveals a truth that's harder to escape. Something within you remains unsettled. This pain, persistent and quiet, is not a sign of weakness, it's a message. And the unsettling truth is that most of your suffering doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from within. From the parts of yourself you've turned away from, the emotions you've suppressed, the truths you've buried to keep going. Carl Jung once said, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." That's exactly what's happening. Life keeps whispering through repeated patterns, emotional tension, the gnawing sense that you're not quite whole. But you don't listen. You drown it out with activity, with noise, with relationships that keep you occupied but never truly connected. Yet this pain, persistent as a shadow, doesn't want to be ignored. It wants to be understood. This isn't just another feel-good message. It's a hard truth. You suffer because you've lost connection with your true self. Since childhood, you were taught to conform, to be agreeable, to be good, to meet expectations. Bit by bit, you silenced your desires, your anger, your intuition. You became a version of yourself that others could accept. But in doing so, you exiled the parts of you that made you feel alive. Now you walk around with a quiet ache, not because you are broken, but because you are living someone else's life. This disconnection is the deepest source of suffering, not the world, not your past, not your circumstances. You can change jobs, relationships, or environments, but if you remain cut off from your essence, the pain will follow. You are not suffering because you failed. You are suffering because you've forgotten who you are. Real healing doesn't begin when you fix the outside. It begins when you stop running from what's inside, when you pause long enough to listen to that inner voice that's been buried beneath years of pretending. The world may have taught you how to perform, but your soul has been patiently waiting for you to come home. Deep within you lies a force you've spent your life avoiding, the shadow. It is not evil, but it is uncomfortable. It holds every part of you that society told you to suppress. Your anger, your jealousy, your cravings, your shame, your repressed sexuality, your hidden ambition, and the wounds you never dared to revisit. Carl Jung called this hidden realm the shadow, and warned that the more we deny it, the more power it holds over us. The shadow is not a myth or a metaphor. It's alive, influencing your choices, distorting your emotions, and sabotaging your life from behind the curtain of your unconscious. Every impulsive decision you can't explain, every self-destructive pattern you repeat, every outburst that leaves you surprised, that is the shadow speaking. You may think your suffering is the fault of others, bad luck, betrayal, external chaos, but Jung teaches us a far harder truth. Your greatest battles are often with the parts of yourself you refuse to face. And so until you have the courage to turn inward, your shadow will keep directing your life, and you will keep calling it fate. That anger you dismiss, it leaks out in passive aggression. That fear you bury, it paralyzes you in moments that matter. That ambition you deny, it becomes resentment toward those who chase their dreams. What you push into darkness never disappears, it mutates. But the shadow is not your enemy. It is a forgotten fragment of your soul, exiled because it made others uncomfortable. And now, it is asking not for destruction but for reintegration. Jung did not believe we should rid ourselves of the shadow. He believed we must integrate it, transforming it from a source of sabotage into a source of power, wisdom, and authenticity. To meet your shadow is to meet yourself, fully, honestly, and without judgment. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole, because what you repress weakens you, but what you embrace empowers you. Your pain, your rage, your fears, they are not signs that you are broken. They are invitations to reclaim the pieces you once abandoned. Integration begins not with judgment, but with presence. When you choose to face your shadow, your healing truly begins. Most people spend their entire lives trying to get rid of pain, numbing it, avoiding it, hiding it beneath distractions and routines. They take medication for anxiety, dive into shallow pleasures, chase external success, all to silence that inner ache. But what if pain isn't the enemy? What if, as Carl Jung believed, pain is not a flaw in the system but a vital message, a call to transformation? Your suffering isn't a punishment, it's a signal. It's your soul crying out, saying, something here is not aligned. And until you learn to listen, pain will persist. Not because it wants to harm you, but because it's trying to wake you up. Every emotional wound, every bout of anxiety, every moment of inexplicable sadness carries a coded message. Pain isn't random, it's precise. It shows up in the same places and the same patterns, often triggered by the same kinds of people or situations. That's not coincidence. That's communication. When you feel that tightness in your chest every time you say yes when you mean no, that's not just stress. It's your body begging you to stop betraying yourself. When you feel drained in the presence of someone who always takes and never gives, your soul is signaling that a boundary has been crossed. The tragedy is that most of us were taught to silence these signs. We were told to be strong, to push through, to keep going. But strength is not suppression. Strength is the willingness to feel, to sit with the discomfort, to decode what it's trying to say. Because the moment you stop seeing pain as a problem to fix and start seeing it as a guide to follow, everything begins to shift. Pain stops being chaos and becomes clarity. Carl Jung said that suffering must be experienced to the end if it is to be overcome. In other words, you can't skip this part. You must walk through the fire, not around it. Because healing doesn't come from avoidance, it comes from presence. When you sit with pain, not to judge it, not to fight it, but to understand it, you begin the real journey home. Pain is not against you. It is for you. It is the voice of the part of you that refuses to be abandoned any longer. Understanding your pain is only the beginning. True healing begins the moment you stop intellectualizing your suffering and start confronting it directly, honestly, without distraction. This is the call to inner confrontation, and it is not for the faint of heart. Carl Jung made it clear, the path to the self runs through darkness, through the very parts of you that you've spent your life trying to avoid. And yet, this confrontation is not punishment. It is liberation in disguise. Because when you finally gather the courage to stop running, to stop pretending, and to face your inner world as it truly is, something begins to shift. You begin to reclaim power you didn't know you had. But don't mistake this journey for a peaceful walk. It is a descent into your fears, your shame, your repressed desires, your rawest wounds. And the scariest part, you can't control it. You don't get to dictate the pace or pick which memories resurface. All you can do is surrender to the truth, to your body, to the signals that have been screaming for your attention for years. That stomach pain when you're with the wrong person? That fatigue that arrives every time you pretend to be fine? That silent rage when your voice is ignored? These are not random. They are messengers. To confront yourself means to listen fiercely and without filters. It means writing what you're ashamed to admit. Confessing to yourself the truths you've buried beneath years of performance. It means observing your emotional triggers, tracking the patterns that haunt your relationships, and daring to ask, what am I really avoiding? Jung didn't see the unconscious as a garbage dump. He saw it as living intelligence, a psyche that wants to heal but refuses to do so until you stop defending and start listening. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. You don't need to solve everything, you only need to show up, to sit with what hurts, to write what trembles, to speak what scares you. Because the moment you do, the unconscious stops being a saboteur and becomes an ally. And that's when you discover the monsters inside you were never here to destroy you. They were here to bring you home. Awareness is not an abstract concept. It's a practice, a discipline, a daily return to yourself. After confronting your pain and meeting your shadow, the next step is learning how to stay awake. To not slip back into autopilot. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is not a passive force. It's a living intelligence, one that constantly speaks through symbols, dreams, emotions, and physical sensations. But most people never learn its language. They rush past the signals. They medicate the symptoms. They call their suffering random when in truth it is deliberate, precise, and meaningful. If you truly want to reclaim your life, you must begin to listen in a new way. Not just to your thoughts, but to your body, your reactions, your recurring patterns. Start with small acts of inner observation. Write down your dreams every morning. Pay attention to what triggers you emotionally. Notice the fatigue that follows fake smiles. Track the anger that erupts when you betray your truth. These are not flaws. They are messages, coded signals from the parts of you that still seek healing. One of the most powerful tools for decoding these messages is deep, honest writing. Not curated journaling, but raw confessions, writing as if no one will ever read it. Write what you're ashamed to feel, what you're afraid to admit, what you've buried for years. Because once your truth escapes the prison of silence, it starts to lose its power to control you. Another pathway is what Jung called the therapeutic mirror, someone who can help you interpret the signals you miss. A therapist, a guide, a space of reflective listening. Because awareness is not always instant, sometimes it needs to be witnessed. But the foundation of all awareness is presence. Not judgment, not analysis, just presence. You don't need to fix everything, you just need to stay. In the discomfort, in the questions, in the rawness. That is where healing begins. Awareness is not about reaching a perfect state. It's about forming a new relationship with yourself. One built on truth, attention, and deep compassion. When you practice this kind of awareness day by day, the unconscious begins to open. And what once felt like chaos slowly begins to reveal its deeper meaning. After the storms of inner conflict, shadow work, and emotional reckoning, there comes a moment of quiet clarity. A shift that is subtle, almost imperceptible, yet profoundly real. This is the beginning of individuation. What Carl Jung described as the process of becoming whole. It is not about becoming perfect, nor is it about becoming someone new. Individuation is the courageous act of becoming who you truly are without the masks, without the roles, without the lies you've told yourself to survive. It is the sacred integration of all your parts, the light and the dark, the wounded and the wise, the shameful and the sacred. To be whole is to stop rejecting pieces of your humanity. It is to recognize that your anger has a voice, your sadness has wisdom, your fear has protection, and your desire has truth. You are not meant to amputate these parts, but to hold them, listen to them, understand them. And in doing so, you end the war within. You stop trying to be acceptable. You stop striving to meet someone else's version of enough. Instead, you begin to live aligned from the inside out. In this state, the things that once haunted you lose their grip. You no longer act from old wounds. You no longer settle to feel safe. You start saying no without guilt and yes without fear. The opinions of others begin to shrink in importance as your inner compass strengthens, and most importantly, you stop abandoning yourself to be loved, because you've learned to love the self that was once exiled. Jung taught that individuation is a lifelong journey, not a final destination. It is a continual unfolding of the self, a deepening into truth. And while the outer world may never fully understand the changes taking place within you, you will know, because you'll feel the difference in your boundaries, in your energy, in your peace. This wholeness is not loud, not dramatic. It's quiet but undeniable. It's the kind of presence that radiates without trying. It's the kind of authenticity that frees you and, by extension, begins to free others. Because when you become whole, your very existence becomes a mirror, a message, a quiet revolution. And in that, your healing becomes a gift far greater than yourself. Healing is not about erasing the pain. It's not about pretending the wounds never happened or trying to rewrite the past. True healing is transformation, not deletion. It is the profound alchemy of turning suffering into wisdom, turning scars into symbols of strength. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He saw that the human psyche doesn't seek perfection but integration. The goal is not to become someone untouched by darkness, but someone who has walked through it and come out illuminated. So many people chase healing like it's a destination, believing that one day they will finally feel nothing, finally be untouched by sadness, fear, or anger. But that day never comes, because healing doesn't remove your humanity. It deepens it. It teaches you to feel without being consumed, to remember without being trapped, to carry your story without letting it define you. The truth is, your pain is not what makes you broken. What breaks you is the belief that you must bury it to be whole. In reality, it is through facing your pain, listening to it, honoring it, learning from it, that you begin to transform. You start to see patterns with clarity. You begin to make choices, not from fear, but from self-respect. You no longer run from discomfort. You allow it to shape you into someone wiser, softer, and more awake. Healing is not the absence of wounds. It is the rebirth of power where once there was only silence. It is when you look at the parts of yourself you once rejected and say, "You belong too." It is when you stop fighting reality and begin cooperating with your own becoming. This transformation doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds slowly over time through small acts of honesty, through moments of presence, through the courage to sit with what hurts. You may still feel pain, but it no longer owns you. You may still carry memories, but they no longer shape your future without your permission. To heal is not to forget, it is to reclaim. to rewrite the story not by removing the chapters of suffering but by giving them new meaning. In doing so, your life becomes not a tragedy to escape, but a journey of wholeness to embody. Awareness is a beginning, but not the end. Once you have seen the truth of who you are, once you have touched your shadow, faced your pain, and reclaimed the forgotten parts of yourself, a new kind of weight appears, responsibility. Because now you know. And once you know, you can no longer pretend not to. You can't unsee your patterns. You can't unknow the role you've played in your own suffering. And that knowing demands something from you, not perfection, not immediate transformation, but conscious participation in your own life. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, was not simply about self-awareness, but about living from that awareness. You are now tasked with choosing differently, no longer reacting blindly, no longer blaming others, no longer seeking comfort at the cost of your integrity. Awareness without action becomes just another form of avoidance. It soothes the ego but leaves the soul untouched. But when awareness is followed by responsibility, something shifts. You become the author of your own life. This responsibility is not heavy, it is sacred. It means saying no when you used to stay silent. It means honoring your boundaries even when it disappoints others. It means choosing honesty over harmony, truth over approval. It means no longer betraying yourself to be loved. You begin to notice what drains you, what inspires you, and you stop justifying what no longer fits. That is maturity, that is power. But this shift doesn't demand that you be fearless. It simply asks that you be real, that you take what you've discovered and bring it into your daily choices, your relationships, your voice. Because if healing stays internal, it becomes stagnation. Real transformation moves outward. It shapes the way you show up in the world. Responsibility means choosing to no longer live in fragments. It is the decision to align your outer life with your inner truth, not perfectly, but consciously. You don't have to be fully ready. You just have to be willing to keep choosing, to keep showing up, to keep living with your eyes open. Because now the cost of going back is too high, and the reward of moving forward is freedom, the kind that only belongs to those who have faced themselves and answered, "Yes, I will live awake." There is no final destination in this work, no finish line where you arrive fully healed, fully certain, untouched by pain. This journey is ongoing, an unfolding, a spiral, a returning. And that's not a flaw of the process. It is the process. Carl Jung understood that individuation, the journey toward wholeness, is not a one-time event, but a lifelong commitment to living with awareness, honesty, and depth. Every insight you gain opens a new door. Every shadow you integrate reveals another layer. The more conscious you become, the more responsibility life places in your hands, not as a burden, but as an invitation to live deliberately. You don't graduate from your humanity. Even when you feel whole, life will test your alignment. Even after clarity, confusion will return, and that is okay. Healing is not a straight line, it is a rhythm. You will rise, you will fall, and you will rise again. The goal is not to avoid the lows, but to meet them differently each time, with less fear, with more compassion, with deeper truth. What once shattered you will now shake you awake. This journey also means accepting that old patterns may revisit, not as signs of failure, but as reminders of how far you've come. You're no longer the same person reacting blindly. You now pause, reflect, respond. That's growth. That's the quiet, sacred proof of transformation. And yes, There will be times when the weight feels unbearable again, when the old voice of doubt creeps in, whispering that you haven't changed at all. In those moments, remember, progress is not about being untouched by struggle. It's about how you hold yourself through it. You now have tools, awareness, and above all, a deeper relationship with yourself. Jung believed that the soul seeks wholeness, not comfort. And so, this journey is not about avoiding the dark, but walking through it again and again, each time more awake, more integrated, more real. You are not returning to who you were. You are becoming who you've always been, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear. Keep going, keep returning, keep choosing yourself over and over. Because this path isn't about arrival, it's about staying awake, one breath, one truth, one choice at a time. As we move through life, many of us carry silent wounds, old grief, unspoken regrets, a lingering sense of being disconnected from who we truly are. The journey explored here reminds us of a powerful truth. Healing is not about erasing the past, but transforming our relationship to it. Carl Jung taught that what we repress does not disappear. It shapes our fate from the shadows. But when we dare to turn inward, to face the emotions we've buried for decades, we begin to reclaim parts of ourselves we thought were lost forever. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about finally coming home to the self we once abandoned to meet expectations, keep peace, or survive. And even in our later years, it's never too late to choose authenticity, to honor our truth, to live not out of fear or habit, but out of deep presence. Pain then becomes not a curse, but a guide, and wholeness is no longer a distant dream, but a moment-by-moment choice. For those who have lived long enough to feel both joy and sorrow deeply, this journey offers something sacred, the chance to live the rest of your life as fully and as truthfully as your soul has always longed to.